Today on r/am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for starting my wedding ceremony before my mom showed up? The day of the wedding started out as they normally do. I, bride, was inside getting ready and final touches were being made outside. After I was almost ready by noon, my mom had to run back to the hotel 20 minutes away to change and come back with my grandma and family friend. The invitation says ceremony at 2, as per usual we were a little late starting but nothing crazy. Next thing I know I'm walking myself down the aisle with no mom, grandma, or family friend in sight. The ceremony continues and it's over before we know it. Still nothing. After 45 minutes finally they pull up. Then I proceed to go and tell them it's over, and that they missed it, and that 2 meant 2. My mother immediately became hostile and proceeded to blame the bakery for not having buns ready, then said they were stopped by a train, and my personal favorite was, "It's your fault you didn't call or text to see where we are." Excuse me? Again the invitation said, "Took." Also note the officiant also had another wedding to get to after mine, so it was a tight schedule. So am I the a-hole for not holding up my ceremony? Side note, I found out the real reason why they were late. She wasn't done getting herself ready, therefore holding up everyone. But she is mad at me because it's my fault. For our next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to be the designated driver for the new girl of the friend group? I, 33 male, met my friend group Laura, 32 female, Anthony, 31 male, Julie, 28 female, when I moved to Paris for my work around 8 years ago. When we go out, here is the deal. I'm the only one with a driver's license, so I'm the designated driver. I drive and pay for the gas, parking, etc., everything related to the car, in exchange for 1 Coke per passenger. During the night, if needed, I'll go with you to retrieve something in my car, a coat, cigarettes, makeup, cash, etc. When it's time to leave, I'll drive everyone to their place and walk them to their door while the others wait in the car. The problem started a few weeks ago. We were already at the bar. When Marie, 29 female, Anthony new girlfriend, went to take a second or third round, I asked her to take me a Coke, and she asked for my credit card. Before I could say anything, Anthony just said, "Come on, babe, I explained to you how it works. Don't make a scene." She just scoffed, walked to the bar, and came back with just her drink. I just looked at Anthony, rolled my eyes, ordered myself a Coke, and moved on. Later that night, Laura came to ask for my car keys and not to come. All girls are going together. Reading between the lines, I understood that it was to get a tampon or a pad from the first aid kit that I always have in my car. Both Laura and Julie know that I have feminine hygiene product in my first aid kit since, in the past 8 years, it has already happened for them to be the ones in need of it. A few minutes later, Marie came back charging at me and started to scream that I'm a pervert. Why an F have feminine hygiene product in their car? That she was right not to pay me a Coke since I am a creep, a freeloader, and other stuff still in the same tone. She created such a scene that we were all kicked out of the bar. While walking back to my car, Marie kept her act, screaming insults and other names to me while fake crying. So I snapped and told her, "Listen to me, B-word, enjoy your ride home, because it will be your first and last one. I won't leave you here to make sure you go home safe, only out of respect for your boyfriend. But after that, you can find your own way to and from the club and bar." After that, we all got to the car, and the ride home was very quiet. Fast forward to this weekend. In the group chat, we are planning a night out, the first one since the incident. And Marie, who joined the group chat, asked for my address and gave me hers, so I could drive her home. I just reminded her of what happened a few weeks ago, that I was serious, that I wouldn't drive her home, and that I don't want her at my place at the moment. She called me petty and an a-hole before leaving the chat group. And now the friend group is divided. Anthony said, "I'm staying out of it," while Julie and Laura don't agree if Marie is right or not. So tell me, Reddit, am I the a-hole? Let's dive into our next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad he's crazy if he thinks I'm going to his house during the week just to make food for his stepkids? My parents are divorced. I, 16 male, now live with mom and visit dad every other weekend. The change happened about a year ago. The judge won't let me stop going on those weekends, but I wish I could. I have a younger brother, 14, and a younger sister, 11. My dad's married and has a stepson, 10, and a stepdaughter, 7. He asked me a couple of weeks ago to come to his house after school and make food for them before going home. He asked this because he found out that I sometimes make food for my siblings when mom works. He asked me about it the next weekend I was over there. He wanted to know why I never did that at his house. I said I just didn't. He told me I could have made food for all 4 of the kids. I told him no, that wasn't happening. He asked why, and I said because I don't mind making something for me and my siblings, but I'm not making food for just anyone. He told me his stepkids are my siblings too, just not by blood, and I told him they're not my siblings, and I never said they were. Then 2 weeks ago he asked to go and cook for his stepkids after school. This is during weeks my siblings are home with me and mom and weeks they're with him. I told him no, and he made that weekend annoying as F. My mom told him to leave me alone, I'm a kid, and I already chose not to keep 50-50 custody, so he'd want to cherish the time he has with me. He told mom to shut up. I didn't do what he asked. He then mentioned it to me Sunday, and that's when I told him he's crazy if he thinks I'm going to his house for the week just to make food for his stepkids. He told me if I can do it for my siblings, I can do it for them. I told him I love my siblings. That's why I do it. Then it was like he focused on me calling him crazy, and he said it's not crazy to expect family to treat each other the same, and how I'm showing blatant favoritism for my blood siblings and not my siblings through marriage. He told me it's cruel to be so blunt about it. Am I the a-hole? On to the next story. Am I the a-hole for waving my passport in someone's face? I, 26 male, am British. I am also a dual citizen UK and Ireland. This is important to the story. While traveling, I was staying in a hotel and a group of us there decided to go out to some bars. One of the group was an American guy, let's call him Jay. For some reason, Jay immediately took against me. It started with a few jokes he made about me being British, which I can take, with the bland food, bad weather type stereotypes. As the bar crawl kept going, he was getting drunker and making more and more comments. For instance, he just started referring to me as the limey, and was constantly saying things like he celebrated when the Queen passed away. It was no longer funny and was just all the time making jabs about where I am from. I'm hardly patriotic and will be the first to complain about my country, but there was a point where I was getting offended, and it was personally directed at me, started imitating and mocking my accent, etc. Eventually I got annoyed and asked him why he thought he had a right to constantly be dunking on me and what his problem was with Britain. Jay's comment was along the lines of I'm Irish, so it's allowed for me to constantly hate on Britain. My family came to America because of the famine. And a bunch of other comments like that. At this point I was a bit drunk and had lost my temper, so I responded by waving my Irish passport in his face. I asked him questions like if he had ever actually been to Ireland, knew any family there, or knew anything about Irish culture. Which he barely knew anything, didn't know of any family, and the only time he ever spent in Ireland was a week in Dublin. I started lecturing, saying that a lot of Irish people had immigrated to the UK, and that after his family spent over 100 years in the United States, he barely had any right to consider himself Irish, let alone think it's acceptable to just hate on random people from another country. The other people on this bar crawl had noticed me losing my temper and laying into the guy, and called me an a-hole since he was only joking, and it's stupid to play the I'm more Irish than you game and should have just asked him to stop earlier. For our next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to take a photo of my sister to college with me? Before my parents had me, 18 male, they had my sister Emily. Emily was 3 years older than me and she passed away when I was a few months old. My parents never recovered. My whole childhood I was in the shadows of the child they lost. I get that grief does things to people and that losing a child is the worst loss a parent can suffer, but it was like I didn't exist most of the time. They talked about Emily all the time. Sometimes they could acknowledge she was gone, but more often than not she was talked about like she was still around. The most attention I got from my parents is when they force-fed words about how much I loved Emily. It never came natural for me to say I love Emily, and I miss her so much. I didn't know Emily, but I did feel haunted by her. I had a big photo of Emily on the wall opposite my bed growing up. They wanted me to fall asleep to my sister looking over me. It always felt creepy. But they had photos of her in every room, even the bathroom. I remember trying to take the photo in my room down, and my parents had a hugely explosive reaction. Like I'm talking, they yelled so loud the neighbors came to check on us. Emily's room was never touched after she died, and sometimes my parents would sit in there for hours sometimes. I was also forced to sit with them in there sometimes. But I had to be very careful because I couldn't touch anything or make the room filthy. Extended family were always so caught between being nicer to me to try and make up for my parents or coddling my parents and putting the weight of their grief and Emily's passing on my shoulders. They would tell me not to be so harsh on my parents when they, my parents, would let me down. My parents could never celebrate anything I did. My extended family tried to fill that gap, but sometimes it felt like they came just to lecture me about compassion and understanding. I did good through school despite getting no help or support from my parents, and I got a full scholarship to college. Before I left, my extended family came over to say goodbye and celebrate a little, because there could be no celebrating me at my parents' house. My parents had these photos of Emily for me to take. They told me I'd need them for my dorm. But I left them behind. I didn't want to take photos of Emily. I wanted to get away from them, and that might seem really unfair. My parents realized the next day, and I got a text from my dad calling me all sorts of names for leaving them behind. Then my extended family said I could have taken one and should, because Emily is still my sister and I should still try to remember her for my parents' sake if not mine. Am I the a-hole? Our last story for today. Am I the a-hole for not forcing my fiancé to wear my father's late wife wedding dress? My father lost his first wife, I'm going to call her Mia, more than 30 years ago. It is a very long and complicated situation, but to summarize it, my mother is the second on his heart because he's always said that the love of his life is Mia, and he always made it clear. My dad still wears his wedding ring with Mia in one hand, my mom bakes a cake for her birthday, my mom leaves my dad alone when it's his anniversary with Mia, and he's feeling down. There are many photos of Mia in the house. There are even photos of her in their room because my father never wanted to change them, etc. As crazy as it may seem, this kind of thing is very normal within couples of this type, and they see that as something normal and sweet even if it is not. For example, making a cake every Mia's birthday was the idea of another woman, who is also married to a widower, and does the same thing. I've been raised that way, kind of having two mothers, even if it wasn't like that. It was not a healthy childhood, but luckily I have gone to therapy to work on all the issues that this caused. My mother always says that he gives her the space she deserves and feels equally loved like he loves his first wife. My siblings and I don't see it that way because our mother deserves better, but if she is happy we will not ruin her happiness, so we never talk about it. Now, coming to the problem, I'm going to marry my fiancée. Her mother never had a wedding ceremony, so she doesn't have a wedding dress to inherit, so my girlfriend excitedly told me that she thinks it would be cute to ask my mother if she can use her dress. My mom has mentioned that in the past, and I don't have any sisters, so I thought it was a nice idea. Anyway, I talked to my mom about lending her dress to my fiancé and she got really excited and said yes. My mother had spoken several times about wanting to have a daughter to wear her dress, and she was very excited when my fiancé asked her to wear it. She even tried it on. That conversation was closed. Now, almost a month after we talked about it, my mom asked my fiancé that it would be nice to wear Mia's wedding dress. My fiancé told her no, she feels a connection with my mother and not with Mia. She doesn't even know Mia. After that, my mother has been asking me to try to convince my fiancé to wear Mia's dress. My father wanted me to put up the typical decoration to commemorate the deceased. But I told him I won't do that, so my mother now wants my fiancé to wear Mia's dress to commemorate her, and for her to be present too because she was someone really special. Again, I never meet her, I don't know who she was. My fiancé told me that Mia is a total stranger to her. My fiancé wants my mother's dress. She wants to give her a special place at the wedding since my mother sees her as a daughter, and she as a second mother, and wants to have a special moment. I told my mother that I don't intend to do that. It even seems gloomy and weird to me, but I have been raised around Mia's memory that sometimes I don't even understand if I am exaggerating or not. Am I the a-hole? Being raised in this kind of way sometimes makes me feel confused about what is normal and not in a family. It would be normal to ask my fiancé to wear Mia's dress in my family dynamic, but I don't know what someone who is raised normally would do, and if I am a bad person for not wanting to have done it. And those are all the stories we have for today. See you tomorrow.